Okay, folks, Thursday, you made it. Incredibly enough, the counting stuff's about to start counting when it comes to college football. The counting stuff is already counting when it comes to NFL football, when it comes to professional sports, and we know there's a fine line between both professional and college. I promised weeks ago I would stop doing countdowns, right? But today there's a significant amount of countdowning that can happen. One, we're within single digits now of NC State and Carolina playing meaningful college football. Those games will count. Those games will actually count. Now, those actually aren't the first football games of college football that count. There's games on Friday night before, on the 28th. So we've already been inside the day range, so to speak, for that kind of stuff. We're also exactly one calendar month away, if you take a full calendar month, from the Carolina Hurricanes playing their first preseason game. One calendar month, 31 days. In which yesterday, Lenovo Center released their new seating chart, which I'm struggling. They just eliminated like 3 sections, right? Like they just got rid of a bunch of stairs and then expanded like the lower bowl. I think that's what they did. They just unveiled new seating sections for whatever it was. Again, which is great. It's fantastic. Get a few more people in that building. We are going to talk about fandom here in a hot second. So I've gone back on the promise about counting down to things, but it gets me excited. It gets me excited to be able to talk about things that mean something to others. And I know yesterday, as predicted, and it's how we opened up the program yesterday, and it's how I'm opening up the program again today. As expected, yesterday we talked about like teams getting into fights, right? And I'm all about teams getting into fights on the field, especially where it doesn't count, amongst themselves. Well, yesterday during the joint practice between the Jacksonville Jaguars and Carolina Panthers, they got into a ruckus. A small scrape and then another scrape where Devin Lloyd, and by the way, Devin Lloyd, former Jacksonville Jaguar, now starting backer for your Carolina Panthers, at least for those of you who follow the team. Devin Lloyd has upper arms that I aspire to. If you see him walking around and you see the definition in his upper arms, like those are the kind of upper arms that I would want on my arms. As a matter of fact, I think my wife would want his arms on my arms. Like they're that impressive. And so he got to go back home and play against a bunch of guys that he was very familiar with and had to get involved in kind of pushing guys away and called it expected. He said, fights are expected. He goes, it's not overblown. We just have them all the time. You just don't see a lot of them. And I get that, at least I'm sure amongst yourselves. But then when it comes against other teams, and we're seeing more and more of it these days, the NFL understands they need to crack down on it. So we talked about it. We talked about those fights. But really, it wasn't necessarily about the fights anymore once you got past the pushing and shoving ahead of tomorrow's game as the Panthers get ready to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars in really what is their third road game of the preseason. They only have one coming home. It was more a lot about fine-tuning. And it was interesting. And the stuff that Max pulled here will speak to it very clearly. And I didn't realize that this is where this conversation was going to go until I wrote it down, and I said, yeah, it makes a little bit of sense. So let's talk about, first of all, the fact that we have a left tackle in Rasheed Walker and a right tackle in Monroe Freeling, and Monroe Freeling got tested for the first time, really, against some incredible pass rushers against the Jacksonville Jaguars. Here's what Dave Canales said about his effort.
This was great. You know, he had a chance to sit on that right side in one-on-ones. Walker, Hines Allen over there, and they really just, you know, they won a couple times. Monroe sat in there. He's big and strong, sat down and protected the pocket like he's supposed to. It was kind of the same in the practice. Some good, some bad, but battling. And just watching him get really comfortable just with the snap count, with his sets and all the things that he and Joe Gilbert have been working on. So it's good to see him take that next step.
Yeah, he got to go Bulldog v. Bulldog against Trayvon Walker. Walker, former number 1 pick, sack kind of guy, had a little step back last year, but a guy who, dude's 270 pounds and 6'5". I'm like, if you're going to go up against challenges, it might as well be that. He's going to be staring at those guys constantly. Coming at him. Fine-tuning, right? Fine-tuning for a rookie who they wanted him to step into a role and got thrust into it instead. Like, they just shoved him in there. Dude, go. Don't be reluctant. Ask her out to dance. This was about fine-tuning. A lot of things are being made of this offense. A lot of things are being made of the idea of slow starts. I don't know if I want to jump and hit the easy button and go full panic and let's just go, this team isn't moving the way it should be. This team isn't getting its rhythm. It takes too long for the car to warm up. We know once it warms up, it can do things, but it feels like it's taking a hot second. Bryce Young understands this. He is the quarterback of this team. He is questioning himself. He's questioning his offense. And let's hear what he says, because by all accounts, it was a very rough and slow start for the starting 11. Bryce Young. Getting going.
I think we settled in. I think that's for us. Newer group. We have some moving pieces. I think that's something that we want to make sure that we're proactive about. Every drive, every play is so meaningful throughout for the course of a season. We don't want to leave any of those out there. So, didn't slow start, but I was super proud of how the guys settled in. I think that for us, it's just being able to refocus. No, it's not the end of the world, but we have to have that sense of urgency. Try to relay that to the guys. Guys as well, kind of doing that amongst themselves. And once we settled in, I think we did some good stuff. So, again, just another part of our game that we can keep growing and improving.
Ruh-roh. All right, before I jump in here, again, don't want to panic button, red button, turn on DEFCON 3 or whatever it is. Tedero McMillan, reigning NFL Offensive Rookie of the Year, also talked about the fact that the offense just couldn't get going early.
I don't know what was going on. I feel like we just, we started slow. We gotta fix those kind of things. But, we all came together and was just like, man, let's step it up. We gotta stop trying to be cute and, move the ball period and all that. We did pretty solid. So, we'll go over the film today and see what it's talking about.
Boy, do you feel confident after hearing your leading receivers say that? Yeah, we got things going. Like, he was so just, I don't even know if that was matter of fact. Like, I'm not sure I feel good about hearing that. I know I don't feel good about Bryce Young saying that we're starting out slow. You get 60 minutes in a football game. How slow can you go before the other team takes advantage of your slothiness?
Look, if they can get these slow starts out of the way before the regular season starts,
fine-tuning.
Because it's been the last, I don't want to say all 3 seasons because you kind of take 2023 out of the equation because that was
a mess.
Doomed from the start.
Yeah, we'll give them a pass.
And honestly, they actually did kind of compete in that second game, that Monday Night Football game against the Saints, if I remember correctly. But the last 2 years, at least, where they had a little bit more, in terms of ability and expectation to, come out with something. I'm not saying they had to light the world on fire, but just come out and look ready and be ready to go. And they got the doors blown off by the Saints 2 years ago, and then last year that Jags game didn't get off to a good start. It was a wonky game too. You had the weather delay that ended up extending the halftime by like an hour at least.
Right.
So and they were just never able to get any kind of momentum going in that one. So look, if they can get out whatever jitters or if maybe it's the new play caller or whatever adjustments they're making, because it's a lot of holdovers from the previous offense. It's not like
that's where I question the Bryce Young thing too.
It's not like there's a ton of new personnel to deal with here, and I know that the offensive line is they're kind of keeping it together right now with duct tape and super glue with the injuries, but just got to get into some sort of rhythm for when the games start actually mattering. So, look, if they want to start slow now, if they want to take whatever these regular season starts have been and get whatever it is they need to get out of the way during the preseason, that's preferable to the regular season, but they need to show some kind of rhythm and some kind of competency, hopefully in this game tomorrow, because then you can start to feel a little bit better about, okay, they can kind of pick up where they left off in that playoff game. Maybe they can get back into that sort of rhythm. Maybe they'll get a little bit more aggressive with Idzik calling the plays, and the offense can continue to take a step rather than just being, hoping for like average or having to kind of lean on the ground game to carry a lot of the water.
It's tough when you're in an orchestra, right? And it's how I equate it a little bit. Your first chair trombone gets sick, right? Your drummer isn't feeling well, and there's usually an understudy, right? In musicals, when you go see these musicals with your family and whatnot, it's never always the main characters. Someone has to step in. There were 2 shows that day. There's someone coming in from behind. They know the songs. They know the dance numbers. They know how the audience is supposed to react at every single point of the music or the dance, whatever it happens to be. And for the Panthers, to find their rhythm, it should feel a lot more natural, which is why I don't want to go full panic button, red button, whatever it is. Tomorrow will show you a lot. It should show you a lot, especially if they're actually able to sustain drives. And it will show you a lot if they aren't at the same time, if they aren't able to go more than a 3-and-out or string together a couple of first downs. 2 first downs and a punt wouldn't be terrible. At least it would show you're operating your offense. That's what it is. Even if you're getting 3rd and 14s, you're still getting 3rd and 14s. They need to be able to do something, show something outside of 3-and-out. As simple as that. But we talk about fine-tuning, right? The things that matter. One of the things that matters is the Carolina Panthers did sign a former All-Pro tight end, Darren Waller, earlier this week, who says he wants to make an impact on the room, who says he knows everybody in there holds some skill sets and whatnot. There seems to be some momentum behind Felipe Franks. Felipe Franks, who was a star at Florida back in the day, bounced around the league quite a bit. This is his second shot with the Carolina Panthers, and he's trying to make the most of it. And because he's catching balls, because he serves on special teams, it now means there are other things to think about when it comes to cutting down the roster and value. Here's Dave Canales talking about Franks' performance, and, this feels like the Jasim Reed question as well. Let's hear from Dave.
He's certainly one of the top special teams players in the league, in my opinion, just in terms of his physicality, how he gets off of blocks, how he blocks on the return, in the return game. So in that phase, I think he's an elite player. As a tight end, he's continuing to grow and develop. This is a really competitive room. When you start to get an overloaded room, but someone is a critical special teams player, then the competition kind of spreads out to other positions. So it's the determination of, can we carry an extra back when we need this extra tight end? Can we carry an extra inside linebacker or safety when we have this guy that we're counting on, if there's a receiver that brings special? So Dan and I have to really look at that picture, and that's where it gets really hard and really tricky for us. But all these guys are trying. All these guys are putting great effort out here. We got another game coming up to evaluate how they can help us.
You have to contribute everywhere, especially in that tight end room, if it's not coming in catches. And y'all remember, again, I say trying to remember. You're not going to remember some of this stuff. But if you look back at last season and the season prior, Jatavian Sanders was on coverage units. Guy that was drafted specifically to be a physical tight end who fought through injuries last year clearly, but then had to make some plays and was on special teams during last season. Felipe Franks is trying to carve out that same kind of niche. They're not the same player. Felipe Franks has a little bit more veteran status to him in terms of just NFL, just knowledge and whatnot. Can he crack this team and make that 53-man? And Canales is right. This is common sense in the NFL, only so many spots. You got to make your ways in other instances. It is a full tight end room. Not everybody is going to be able to just catch the ball and not play on special teams. And maybe that contributed to Sanders some of the injury things that he was dealing with, the bumps and bruises he was with last year. I'm not saying that Xavier Legette needs to play on special teams. But for some of these guys to, make things happen, it has been suggested they need him. Are you going to be a gunner? Are you going to be a guy that just needs to help form that wedge on the frozen kickoff on kickoffs? What else can you contribute? And so you hear these stories, and you talk about fine-tuning. The fine-tuning just isn't on the field. The fine-tuning comes with Dan Morgan and Dave Canales trying to figure out who can actually, serve multiple purposes. And we did have this discussion about Reed and Jimmy Horn Jr. Earlier this week about how they will crack this roster and who has to get kind of pushed out. Those might be a little bit more kind of nuanced because they are more receivers than they are kind of gunner guys. And I'm not sure you want 5'9", 180 pounds running down there and making tackles. That wasn't Hunter Renfro's game anywhere he played. It certainly wasn't going to be with the Panthers if he had gotten more of a shot with them or had stayed healthy. These are those things that coordinators will look at. These are those things that will be fine-tuned to make sure that there's some sort of contribution coming around. You can't afford to, in today's NFL, not have guys do extra things. You just can't. Outside of linemen, I don't need 6'5", 270 running down the field. There's a reason why they don't do that. especially when you're a rookie offensive tackle. I'm rambling here just a little bit. But it is about fine-tuning. Fine-tuning your offense, getting them up and running, fine-tuning this roster, trying to figure out if these special players, these special plays that are being made are still worth it after games 2, games 3, and games 4, and making their case. Tomorrow will tell us an awful lot about where they think this team stands. Yesterday's practice, probably not the best in terms of trying to figure out what this team is supposed to look like. It was just two teams butting heads, breaking off some steam, and breaking out a little sweat in that Florida heat. All right, don't forget, that is tomorrow night, our family station, Mix 101.5, Jacksonville, and the Panthers in Jacksonville.
I'm Max Goren with 3 things you need to know right now from 99.9 The Fan. The Carolina Panthers held joint practice with the Jacksonville Jaguars yesterday ahead of tomorrow's preseason Week 2 matchup. You can catch coverage of that game as well as every Panthers game this season on our family station Mix 101.5 with tomorrow's kickoff scheduled for 7:30 p.m. Charlotte FC led 3-1 in the second half of last night's match at Toronto FC, but even with their opponents down to 10 men after a Walker Zimmerman red card, the Crown conceded 2 goals late, resulting in a 3-3 draw. Charlotte gets back on the pitch at home on Saturday night against DC United. The Durham Bulls split last night's doubleheader in Gwinnett and will continue the series against the Stripers tonight. Bulls coverage is available on 620 AM Buzz Sports Radio, 99.9 FM HD2, and WRAL News Plus, with first pitch scheduled for 7:05 p.m. For all the latest news on your favorite teams, download the 99.9 The Fan app or visit 999thefan.com.
There's a study out at Nielsen, a Nielsen study, that suggests the NFL fans in the smallest markets are buying the most merch. Yes, indeed. Smallest markets. And when you think of the smallest markets, like, you automatically kind of go, well, isn't Charlotte a small market? No, it's actually not. It's actually fairly big. But when you talk about small markets, go right away to Buffalo. Go right away to Kansas City. You get those just in your face complete. Also among those small markets, and it shouldn't come to no surprise to you, like Pittsburgh, right? Pittsburgh is one of those markets. And the Carolina Panthers are flat in the middle of this. They're like 16th, 17th. Of the 32 teams, they're right in the middle. And when it comes to buying merch, the larger markets, and it's probably because you just have split allegiances in most cases, although a lot of folks would argue that Los Angeles really isn't split. It's kind of still a Rams town, and the Chargers are just renting space at SoFi because their fan base continues to grow. There's no doubt about it, but it's not like the Raiders who keep moving around. That's a bigger fan base. But like in New York, right? You're split between the Giants and the Jets, but it's not like you're having to invest in new things. There's no alternate jersey for the Giants unless it's, military appreciation giveaway day, or, even for the Jets, right? Those have been solid and the same, at all instances. So there's no real, I don't need to buy new merch unless, the hand-me-down hat I got from my dad, got torn up or eaten by the dog or got lost on the the 5 train or whatever in New York. I'm just throwing things out. And in Carolina, it's the same kind of way. And maybe some of that has to do with recent non-success. And finally, those fans of the Carolina Panthers are able to, buy a few things. In the NFL, it's really more about kind of like logo change and slight alterations to hats, never really to the jerseys. But now you have guys to lean on. Maybe you will want to buy a Jalen Phillips jersey. Maybe you do want a Devin Lloyd jersey. You're probably going to go out and buy a Ted McMillan jersey now that year one proved to be everything you wanted out of year one. You want to have those. I remember having this conversation with myself out loud. And when you talk to yourself out loud, you usually find answers, but it also suggests something else is going on in your head, and we don't have to go that far into my psyche, although I do believe I do need to talk to somebody about it. I thought to myself at one point, you know what? I'm going to do it. I'm going to buy the Bryce Young jersey. I'm going to buy the number 9 and just make it happen and wish it into existence. And this was the same year, unfortunately, that I had a bet sitting on my phone in year 2 of Bryce Young where it said he was going to throw for more than 3,000 passing yards. And I had to stare at that bet all season long, to the point to where I was watching it at the end of the season. I said, you know what? With 2 400-yard games, he could still win this for me. I'm like, nope. But that would be the thing. Like, you're talking about the casual fan drawing me in as someone who wanted to buy a jersey. And now you're at the point to where in some of these cities you've hit the saturation point. And in the NHL, they're trying to fight this. They're trying to fight this in the biggest way possible when it comes to what they are trying to do. And by the way, the NHL announced this morning that Boston and Edmonton are going to play in Germany next season, which, great, fantastic, totally fantastic. They're unveiling these City Connect, kind of like the City Connect jerseys. They're calling them City Connect was the thing that baseball used, and I can't remember what the term is. In it might be the same in the NBA, right? I think they're using the same kind of thing.
Just City Edition.
Just City Edition. The NHL's like, yep, we're doing this too. They're calling it Hometown Remix. And I think, and this speaks, I think, directly to Carolina Hurricanes fans as we switch to the NHL and briefly mention NHL here, because there's really not a lot of hockey to talk about these days other than that Alexander Nikishin remains unsigned. Still 31 days away from the preseason opener. Carolina Hurricanes fans have had variations of jerseys thrown at them year after year after year. Like, you know, blessed with a Stadium Series jersey at the same time back in 2023. The variations on the logo. The one that everyone seems to be clamoring for that doesn't want to come back or maybe can't come back or hasn't come back is the main logo, right? The warning flags are on all the jerseys. We have the canes in diagonal on the jerseys. But the one jersey that isn't there is the one with the main Hurricanes logo on it. And there's always a fight over that one. It's on hats, I know. It's on other things, but never like on the front of the jersey.
Well, they have it on the red jersey still.
Did they still wear the red?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely
It's
more of an alternate
though,
at this
right?
point. I'm sure they'll probably wear it 12 to 15 times this upcoming year. I mean maybe less now that they're bringing in this hometown remix jersey. But I said this when I was with Adam Gold yesterday. I was like, I think I speak for, and I'm not speaking for everyone, obviously, but
You can, though.
I think it's a fairly common opinion that I think people would just like to see them go back to the classic uniform set. The red and
Just
the white
one.
with the silver main logo on it, the warning flags at the bottom. I think,
Right, yeah, across the bottom, yeah.
and they did that with the 25th anniversary a couple years ago, and people really liked it. People really liked that font, the shiny silver, all that. I think the way it's also it's connected to the 2006 championship.
Right.
I think that has a very positive connotation and a positive, connection for a lot of fans. So we'll see if they ever go back to that. I doubt they're going to be changing up the road sweater anytime soon, considering they just changed that last year. But they do still have the one jersey with the main logo on it. They just don't wear the red at home as often anymore.
I would like to see that. I mean, again, they run the throwback. Obviously, there's nothing I can do about that, folks. I can't fix that one, but it's just another alternate. But at a certain point, you've kind of bought up everything you possibly could buy for the Hurricanes. They had the big yard sale this past weekend, and you went out and bought some of the older things, right? You bought some older jerseys that were still floating around, and you can buy pucks and you can buy those things. I keep thinking to myself, I'm like, with very little roster turnover too with this team, I mean, I can imagine that the Carolina Pro Shop, that's what we're calling it now. I will always still call it the I. I mean, is that a weird thing? We need to go to the I to go get some stuff. They're calling it Carolina Pro Shop. Unless they start stocking, I guess a Bussy jersey would be the one kind of one that wasn't available on the regular last year. A lot of people had to go out and special order that one. I mean, not even just special order it as in the uniform was available, the jersey was available. They had to actually go out and customize it because they just weren't making it. I'm sure Fanatics and the suppliers went, oh, wait a second. How many people does this guy have in his family? They keep ordering this jersey. And Brandon Bussey, by the way, had his day with the Cup in Long Island, which many, many, many people turned out for. Big write-up for him. Big love for him up in Long Island. Going back home for him. Cup's got to be making its way down here at some point, right? Got to be in the next week or two, I would think. Coming back home, swinging through the area. But I look at fans and I go, okay, you've got that hat. All right, you've got the Stadium Series hat, you've got the alternative hat, you've got the 47 hat, you've got the trucker cap, you've got the draft cap, and there's a draft cap every year. I go, I guess that would be the new thing, but you would have to be a really, really diehard to keep a closet full of this. I'm sure there are people out there, I'm sure if I said, hey, send me a picture of what you got at your house when, the days were flush of, T-shirts being given away at the door and, new caricatures being put out there. And every time somebody put out something on like Etsy or Breaking Tees or whatever it is, you probably have those. I mean, I the player shirts and things like that. But at a certain point, I'm like, you've kind of gathered everything you possibly can gather up. And I wonder when that breaking point comes for a lot of people where, the story about the NFL fans in the smaller markets buying the most merch, I always wonder about that same kind of thing. I'm like, at a certain point, I'm like, what's left for you to pick up off the shelf? Like, there's only so many crossover dolls and, pucks you can buy. I mean, I guess if you were trying to, like, buy a game puck for every home game, but could you imagine the wall space you'd have to dedicate to that? And then is there a story? Like, there's a nostalgia play. I just wonder if we've hit that tipping point. Like, there's only so many more things you can pick up as a fan. I mean, I guess unless it's outside of autographs, and with a team that didn't have a lot of turnover, especially with the Carolina Hurricanes, if that's actually possible to pick up anything else. Just some food for thought this morning, folks.